Hey everybody! In the last video, we learned how to create our own variables in Java, how to declare them, how to assign values to them. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to work with those variables and a couple of more things. So we're going to start with the plus operator and what it does. So the plus operator works a little bit differently. It has another function than it does in Python, and it's a concatenation operator. And what that means is if either side of your expression right here is a string, the result will be a string. Even though, for example, here we're trying to get a string, the value is, then we put a plus, and then we put an integer 5. This whole string will be the value is 5. However, it will all be a string. So this 5 will turn into a string, even though it was an integer before. So also, and as well, it works as an addition operator, nothing new there. So if you have 5 plus 5, the result will be 10 as an integer, as long as your 5s are integers and not strings. Okay. Whenever you're working with strings in Java, you have to be very careful because strings in Java, they do not span any lines in the source code file for Java. So what that means is your computer does not know that this line is still a continuation of your first line. So what you have to do is you have to let your computer know that, hey, this is all one string, and even though it spans more than one line, it's still a part of one big string. And how do we do that? We do that with the plus sign, or in this case, it's called concatenation operator. So as you can see here, what we're doing, we're separating our big string into little pieces. In this case, we have these lines are now okay and will not cause the error as before. And we separate it into these lines are, then we put a plus sign. Then again, notice how each one of these strings have each own pair of quotation marks. So each part of this big string, each small part, has its own quotations. So these lines are in quotations. Then again, new quotations are now okay and will not quotation marks with a plus. Quotation marks cause the error as before. Period, quotation marks, close your parentheses and put a semicolon at the end because this is a Java statement. Yeah, you can do string concatenation with different data types. It works as well. And in this case, we can join a string, which is a part of our string, as you can see here, again, in quotation marks, then a plus sign, quotation, and number like this, colon, quotations, plus integer 5. In this case, integer 5 will turn to string, and it will be no problem printing it out next to a colon right here. It will be printed as a 5 right here. No problem. Alright, so now we're going to talk about identifiers. And identifiers are simply just names that you give to your classes, variables, and methods. So whenever you have to make a choice on how to name something, that's called an identifier. That's all there is. And in Java, you cannot use any of the reserved words to use as your identifier. And here are some rules for naming your identifiers in addition to this one about the reserved keywords. So your identifier can only contain letters from lowercase a to z or capital case A to Z, then the digits 0 through 9, an underscore, or a $sign. These are the only things that are allowed. Now, more rules. The first character cannot be a digit. You cannot use a digit to be the first character of your identifier. Now, your identifiers are very case sensitive, so you have to be mindful of that. As you can see here, items ordered with an O being a 0 is not the same as items ordered with an O being a lowercase o. In the same way, if this O wouldn't be a 0, if it would be a capital O, it would still be not the same identifier as the one with the lowercase o. And of course, identifiers cannot have any spaces. Instead of spaces, I recommend that you use an underscore. So these are all of the reserved keywords that you cannot use. And you don't have to memorize them all. It's not like you would even want to use those as identifiers. The most important ones that you have to remember, that you cannot use do, you cannot use catch, you cannot use case, break, continue, what else? If, obviously, public or private, you cannot use those. Short, also native, new, long. So just go through this list, look at these words, and just be familiar that there are some words that are reserved. So in case you're getting a weird error and you don't know what's happening, you don't know what's going on, what's the problem, just look at your variable names. Maybe there's something there is a reserved keyword. Whenever you're naming your variables, you should try to be descriptive, because again, when you're working with somebody else and in the industry, you will be working with other people on your code. You won't be just the only one writing it. You have to be descriptive so that people understand what's going on in your code. So as you can see here, this example, we have a double TR. Do I know what TR stands for? No. The only person who knows what TR stands for is whoever wrote this variable, which is a bad coding practice. However, look at this one, sales tax rate. Now you know exactly what this is. This number stands for sales tax rate. And then if you say this number stands for TR, that does not give me anything. I have no idea what's going on. However, if you tell me this number is sales tax rate, it's all good, we're all on the same page. So, and this concept comes from the fact that your Java programs, they should be self-documenting. Here are some more rules. So your variable names, they should begin with a lowercase letter always, and that's a rule. They should always begin with a lowercase letter. And then if you need to put a new word, you should switch to a title case. Or again, you can put a underscore. So for this example, we have CA, you could put underscore tax underscore rate. This also would be acceptable. But in this case, they're using a uppercase letter instead of the underscore, which also works, as you can see here. Now, whenever you're naming your classes should start with the capital letter. Always your class starts with the capital letter. So variables, lowercase, classes, capital. And then you can go to this link if you want, and you can look at more naming conventions that exist in Java. However, all that you need to know we've just covered, so this is just for fun if you're interested in that. Now here are the primitive data types that are built into Java. So these already exist for you. You don't have to look for them anywhere. They already exist as your basic Java package, and these are byte, short, int, long, float, double, boolean, and char. And let me show you what these are. So byte, 1 byte is going to be integers from range of -128 to +127. Then short, it's 2 bytes. It all comes down from how we store our data. So 2 bytes, it's longer. So as you can see, these numbers in the range. Integer, here, long, even more. Float, floating point numbers have 7 digits of accuracy. That's all you need to know. And double has 15 digits of accuracy. That's all there is to it. So for us, for this class, we're probably going to be using a lot of ints, and we're going to be using a lot of doubles and floats. So this is how you would declare your variables. I mean, it's all the same thing. Data type, your name, and a semicolon. You can see here data type, variable name, semicolon. These are all our data types that we just covered, and these are just the names that we have that the user created by themselves. Now, byte, short, int, and long, these are all integer data types. So these cannot store a decimal number. They can only store whole numbers. Now, integers are called integer literals. And then those other data types that can hold any fractional values, those are called floating point numbers. So integer literals, floating point numbers. As you can see here, floating point numbers are just your your numbers with decimals. All there is to it. So we have a float and we have a double. Float is sometimes called single precision because it goes up to 7 decimal points, and double is called double precision because it goes to up to 15 decimal points. Another thing to know is that Java is a strongly typed language, and what that means is that float and double are not the same thing in Java. Even though you might think, well, 31.51 can be a float and a double because float goes to up to 7 decimal points and double goes to up to 15, which this number only has 2, so you might think, oh, a double and float are the same thing. But no, this will cause an error. It will not. You will not be able to do that. So let me see, where was this? The default value is a double. So whenever you're creating your variables, you should start with a double. If you want to make a double and make it into a float, you can do that by adding the letter F, capital F, or a lowercase f to the little. This is how it's going to be float number equals 23.5, and then at the end you add some kind of number. But I recommend you just don't use float, just use double. Use double and int. That's all you need to know. For decimal points, use double. For whole numbers, use int. And you won't have to deal with any of this. Another thing to know is that whenever you create your decimals, they cannot contain currency symbols or any commas. So this right here will cause a big error. This is a big no. We don't do that. So this is what we do instead. We just put a number, then we put a period, and then we put the decimals at the end. So no commas, no currency signs, just numbers and the period. All you need to do when you're creating a decimal point. Now, this is how scientific and E notation works in Java. As you can see the differences. So this is the decimal notation, this is scientific, this is the E notation, and Java is using E notation to represent values in scientific notation. So this is how you would use a E notation in Java. This is what you would assign, the number that you would assign it to. Now there is another data type called Boolean, and Boolean works the same way as it works in Python. It can only hold 2 values, either true or false. And again, if you're using a Boolean data type, you cannot assign it to a string. You cannot assign that variable to a 0, to an integer, to a float, to anything else. Only true or false. So Boolean can only hold 2 values, true or false. Another important thing to know is that there is a char data type in Java, and char just stands for character. That's all there is. And the difference between the character data type and the string data type is that the character data type will be enclosed in single quotation marks. Single quote marks, as you can see here. These are single. And remember, all of our strings were enclosed in double. So that's a very important thing to remember, that single quotation marks for characters, double quotation marks for strings. Okay, so let's move on to variable assignment and variable initialization. So what a variable assignment is, we covered it a little bit in the other video, but it's just whenever you want to assign some kind of value to your variable. And we do that with the help of the assignment operator, and it's just an equal sign. So your everything that's on your left side, the operand that's on your left side of the equal sign, is going to be the variable name, and then what's going to be on the right is going to be whatever data type value you want to assign to your variable. But the type of that data has to be compatible with the data type that you assign to that variable. And here's a great example right here. So we have our public class initialize, then this is the definition of our main. And here we're declaring two variables, integer month and integer days. As you can see here, you can do that, but I would not recommend doing this because it confuses you in the very beginning. I would recommend that you do integer months, semicolon, integer days, semicolon at the bottom. So however, whatever is more useful to you. Now, in this case, we are assigning our variable month to 2 and days to 28. And whatever is going to be printed, we're going to have month plus months plus has plus days plus days. So this will print month 2 has 28 days. Now you can see here that your local variables, you can declare and initialize them on the same line. In this case, we have integer months equals 2, comma, days equals 28. Again, I would not recommend you do this, what they're telling you to do in the book. I would recommend that you space your variables out just so it's a little bit easier for you as a beginner to follow your flow of the code and see what's actually happening in your code. Now, your variables will only hold one value at a time, not more, not less, just one value. And your local variables, they do not receive a default value. So your computer will not know that you want, for example, months to hold a 0 or days to hold a 0 just by doing this. This will not happen because in this case our variable is only declared. It doesn't have anything inside of it. So this will cause an error. As you can see here, we're trying to declare month and days without any values. We do not assign any values to them, and then we're trying to print them. Well, this will cause a syntax error because your computer does not know that these store anything because they don't store anything. They don't have anything in them. So it will not print a 0. It will not print an empty string. It will throw you a syntax error. All right, new topic, arithmetic operators. So Java has 5 arithmetic operators. This one is addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulus. And I showed you all of those in Python already, so you shouldn't have any problems with these. And I mean, you know, addition, plus is addition, minus is subtraction, a star is multiplication, slash is division, and the percentage sign is a modulus. You probably see binary here, and you might wonder what that means, that the type is binary. And all that means is that these operators must have 2 operands. So they need to have one on the left side, as you can see here, one on the left side, one on the right side. That's all there is. This is where binary comes from because binary means 2. So cost and tax in this case are our operands, one on the left side of the plus sign, one on the right side of our plus sign. That's why binary. It's gonna throw you an error if you try to divide any number by 0. I mean, the same way as your teacher would be mad at you in the math class if you try to divide something by 0, the same way your computer will be mad at you if you try to divide any number by 0. Now, whenever you want to do integer division, it's gonna be tricky because an integer does not have any float values. So we have a question right here. What's the value of a half? And you might think that in Java it's 0.5 in an integer, but no, the answer is going to be a 0 because it doesn't store any decimal points. Anything beside the decimal points, it just ignores it. It does not round up. It does not do anything. It just gets rid of it. So a half, if you store it as an integer, is going to be 0 in Java. So whenever you want to use any variables for divisions, don't use integers. You should be using floats or doubles. The rules for parentheses and arithmetic expressions are the same as they are in algebra, and just basic algebra. So as you can see here, everything's that inside of your parentheses are going to be counted first, are going to be calculated first, then second, then we would do these parentheses, which would be the division, and then the last thing will be minus 25, and the result would be negative 19. So this is all I had so far, and I will see you in the next video. Let me know if there are any questions or if you need help with anything, and I'll see you in the next.